Please. Clicker here.
Oh, it's on? Okay, great. So, hello everybody. I'm Maarten. I'm from Belgium. And I hunt fake news for a living, and you don't have to take my word for it. The BBC is saying it, and that's, I'm told, a very good source. So a couple of years ago, I built something I call the Trendalizer engine, and it's a tool that basically pulls in about 400,000 links from the internet every day, indexes them, so it grabs the title, the description, the thumbnail, the author, and then starts measuring how much engagement these links are getting on Facebook. And also on a bunch of other networks, and how many video views they're getting on YouTube, for example. So with that tool, you can basically see what's going viral on the internet right now, and you can sort and filter it in various ways. So I only want to see stuff from Belgian news websites, for example, or only stories about Trump, or only videos that have this or that word in the title. It turns out that the system was really good at monitoring fake news websites. So somewhere around 2015, there were a lot of fake news websites making the news, and so there were also lists being circulated on the internet of these are sites you have to look out for that often publish stuff that's not true. So I started systematically adding these sites to lists in my Trendalizer engine, so I could see which articles do they have that are going viral right now. And then, of course, when we noticed that one of these articles was taking off, I could then write an article about it saying this or that is not true, and that's what we were doing with a website that I co-founded called Lead Stories. Our subheader is just because it's trending doesn't mean it's true. And so for a couple of years, we've been hunting trending false stories like this. And that resulted last February in Lead Stories being accepted in Facebook's third-party fact-checking partnership. So we were able to actually stop these stories on Facebook. So if we say this is false, then it basically stops going viral on Facebook. Which is nice. So in 2018, I noticed several websites that started popping up on my radar. They all looked mostly the same, and they all published stories that looked like this. So this Muslim figure woman, this woman has nothing to do with it. She's just some journalist. A story about Michelle Obama being a man. A civil war erupting in Sweden that we somehow all missed. So no other media reported on this civil war. Yeah, legalized child marriage in Sweden. Yes, why not? So all these sites look the same, and yeah, just from looking at the layout, they were very similar. So at that time, I worked together with newscheckers.nl, a Dutch fact-checking site from the University of Leiden. Who are also looking in these sites, and they're also using my Trendalizer software, and they asked, hey, what can we find out about these sites using Trendalizer? Oh, you're looking at these too? Oh yeah, I've been looking at them as well, so let's collaborate and let's see what we can find out. So News Checkers revealed that they found over 450 fake Twitter accounts being used to spam links to these websites. And most of these Twitter accounts were using pictures of Serbian celebrities, but yeah, they were posing as Americans. So I don't know if you can see it. I don't know. No, there's no laser. But yeah, the profile there, it says that she's a teacher in the US, and she has an American flag. But so how did we find out who was behind this network? So as I said, there were all these fake Twitter accounts, and there were about 78 Jessicas in that network. So and one Jessica stood out. No, all the men in the audience, you have to look lower. The point that's special is that she joined Twitter on September 2014, and all the other Jessicas joined in 2018, so they were just created. The other Jessicas all had Twitter names like @Jessica12345, but this Jessica is named @Dabszewski. So I was very interested in this Jessica. So I looked into the Google cache, and I found a version of this Twitter profile from 2 years ago, where Jessica had a different profile picture, and she posted an image. You can't see it. It's the date. It's kind of hard to read, but somewhere in 2016, she posted a post, and where the blank space is, there used to be an image. So, hey, that's interesting. So I did a Google image search for Dabszewski, and what do you know? The first result is Dabszewski on Twitter, and it's a picture of some man sitting in front of a body of water. So remember that. And I also saw in the bottom right corner some artists from Kumanovo in Macedonia who made art by burning, using a soldering iron to burn things on wood. So I dug a bit further. So Dabszewski Kumanovo, maybe that gave some hint. And that artist's page on Facebook came back. So there was nothing special on that artist's page. I checked it out. But in the snippet on Google search, there was an old comment that had been deleted on the actual Facebook page, and that also has a first name, Sasso Dabszewski. So Sasso Dabszewski happens to have a Google Plus profile with a profile picture, which is a tattoo of some kind of shield with an M, so it's the exact same profile picture as the Twitter account. So on Facebook, I found Mr. Dabszewski's profile, and there he is with his tattoo. And he had completely battered down his account on Facebook, secured everything. So he put in, his friends list was hidden, his pictures was hidden, his posts were hidden, so only friends and family could see it, because, Facebook really cares about your privacy. So, he took advantage of that. Unfortunately, his wife didn't. So by looking at pictures of Sasso Dabszewski on Facebook, we found the profile of his wife, and what do you know? There's a vacation snap with the exact same picture that was missing from the Twitter account. So we basically had our guy, so we looked at what he had been posting, and indeed there were several links to sites, to various sites in the network that were also pushing pro-Trump and anti-Islam, anti-migrant stories. So we looked a bit further. Mr. Dabszewski also was seen in a picture sitting by the side of the road. So he was also following a whole bunch of pages about trucking and Volvo and trucking companies and cars. So he's basically a truck driver, and that matches up with the name of one of the sites, which was Tamce 1966. Tam is a brand of trucks and buses, which was apparently made in the region for a while. So that tattoo eventually led us to the guy. But he wasn't the only one. Of course, there was a lot more to it than that. This is just a nice detective story, but the real work was, we looked at all these sites we found, the ones that the Twitter accounts were spamming, the ones that had all these similar stories. And we looked at the advertising accounts they were using, because a lot of these sites are commercial in nature. They're just in it to attract as many American and European visitors to their site, so they can then click on ads. To get ads on your website, you need to register an account with a company like Google AdSense or Content Ad or Taboola. And they give you a bit of JavaScript code to put on your page, and that will make advertising appear there. But this code that you get, it contains a unique identifier, so that the advertising company knows where to send the money when people click on the ads. So my Trendalizer software also has a feature where it indexes all these advertising code IDs that it finds on all the sites that it ever encounters. So it's built a database of a few million domain names with all the AdSense, Taboola, content ad codes, also IP addresses, whois registration data. So we were able to build, to use this fingerprinting tool to build a map of the network, find some related sites. And then we also looked at the oldest sites that were registered, and then we looked at those in the fingerprinting tool to see if they had advertising accounts that were not on the newer ones, because sometimes it happens that they're found in violation of the terms of service of some advertising service. So they lose their account and they start a new one, and then on the old sites you find, oh, there's 30 more sites that are connected to this one. So we kept on mapping it and digging and digging and digging, and eventually we found about 70 sites in total after repeating this cycle for a while. So this is the fingerprinting tool. Acne Info was one of the sites. So if I enter that, then I get the lists of all their AdSense accounts, whois data, etc. And if I then click on 7 domains there on the left with that AdSense code, it would bring up these results on the right. So these were all other sites using the exact same code. And the fingerprinting tool is also able to map that graphically. So to show which sites share fingerprints with each other, and then automatically clusters them according to which sites are connected more with each other than the other ones. So that allowed us to build a giant Excel sheet with names of sites and when they were registered and which AdSense account did they use in which period. Then the next thing we did was we also downloaded all the headlines of all the sites that were still online, because we noticed one thing these guys love to do was reuse the same stories over and over again. If they noticed, oh, this story works, this is really good at going viral, they will just wait 2 or 3 months and use it again on another site. Even if it's old news from 3 years ago, it doesn't matter. If it says Muslim immigrant in the headline, people will click. It's very strange. So all these stories, a lot of them were copied or stolen from right-leaning websites in the US, like Breitbart or Zero Hedge, or Your News Wire or News Punch, but also jewsnews.co.il. And there were also some articles that came from regular newspapers, but which were then sensationalized a bit more in the headline. Also some satire stories that were copied as real news. So we think that there are sets of articles circulating among these guys that they sell or borrow to each other. So they can say, oh yeah, you need new content for your site. Here are some articles that are proven to work. Because we think their English is not good enough to write quality content that people will click on. So they just steal it, and it seems to have worked for them. So we looked at the most popular headlines. So I just downloaded all the headlines and saw on how many sites they were used. So that's the output of some script. Yeah, it's very dark. You can hardly see it. But then I used a tool called BuzzSumo to see which other sites published the same headlines. So there's a story, largest food stamp fraud in history uncovered in Florida. 20 Muslim store owners arrested, which was a real story, but half of the store owners had Hispanic names. It came from a real newspaper, but it happened in 2015. But yeah, every few months those store owners got arrested again and again. So using BuzzSumo, we were able to find a few other sites that we missed in our initial analysis. So we could add them to the list, also run the fingerprinting tool on them to see if they were connected and so on. We also used their own Twitter bots against them, because they were constantly spamming Twitter with links to their sites. And they would constantly register new Twitter accounts, which would each spam 2 or 3 links to their latest website, but sometimes also spam a few random links to conservative websites and maybe a few links to their older sites. So we kept an eye on Twitter's accounts spreading links to the newest site. And then after a while, we would see that these accounts would also spread links to sites that had just launched. Also, the fingerprinting tool came in really handy because we could put an alert on their Google AdSense code or whatever advertising network they were using. So I would basically get an email in my inbox automatically whenever a new site popped up. Sometimes I literally saw their new sites only a few hours after they launched it. So this was their greatest hit. It got 631,000 shares on Facebook. Muslim figure, we must have pork-free menus or we will leave the US. How would you respond this? So not even the English in the headline is correct. A lot of the times, headlines like these would lead to a page where there wasn't even an actual poll. So you could not click yes or no or leave a comment. Anywhere you would click would open more advertising. So, and yeah, people kept falling for it because they used this story several times. So in the end, we discovered that between 2016 and 2018, they launched over 70 websites. They made more than 7,000 posts. They got more than 7 million engagements over that period. Just to give you some comparison, Snopes, the biggest fact-checking site in the US, got about double that amount of engagements in that same period. And this was just being run by some guys as a hobby project to make some extra money. They mainly used Twitter and Facebook to spread all their stuff. So we also did an analysis using BuzzSumo of the average engagement per post of all the sites in the network. So we mapped it out when were the sites registered, because most of the sites only operated for a month, 2 or 3 months, sometimes a bit longer, and then they would switch to a new domain name because the older site stopped working because it was being blocked by social media networks and search engines. So as you can see in the beginning, in the early days, 2016, early 2017, they were doing a steady business. Then it dropped off a bit, and then they had some really successful sites. And then near the end, they were really struggling. We also noticed that in the beginning, they registered about 1 or 2 sites now and then, so once a month, maybe sometimes 2 sites in a month. Near the end, they were launching like 5 sites per month or 6 sites per month. So they really had to, come up with new sites quickly to. And we also noticed their engagement on Twitter. So in the beginning, it was not very much, and then near the end, we really saw that they were using more and more bots in an effort to stay relevant and to attract traffic. Not all these retweets are real, so there's a lot of stuff by bots. So a representative from Twitter told us not everything that gets retweeted gets seen by a lot of people. Sometimes we hide it in the search results, but the retweet counts in the retweet number anyway. So, but yeah, this clearly shows that they were struggling on Facebook, so they tried moving to Twitter. So with the entire list of sites in our hand, we could basically look up at the domain name registration of all the sites. And of course, all the recent ones were registered anonymously. But the oldest ones, when they just started out, they hadn't learned that trick yet. So we actually found real names and phone numbers on some of those sites. We looked them up on Facebook, and they were friends. They were also connected to the truckers. So that was nice, and we think that their oldest sites, they started out with legitimate or semi-legitimate websites like motorcycles, bikinis, health supplements, fast cars, cute pets, that sort of stuff. And then during the US presidential election, when the whole Veleš, Macedonia thing happened, every teenager discovered, hey, if you post stuff about Trump, it gets even more clicks than photos of cute puppies or racing cars. So let's do Trump stuff for a while. So and then after a while, there started to be a backlash. So they thought, yeah, we better protect our identity so nobody ever finds out, especially some guy in Belgium. So that's when they started registering anonymously. But the mistake they made was that they kept using the same advertising accounts. So we also used a tool called CrowdTangle, which is offered by Facebook to any journalists that wants to use it. So using, again, that list of sites that we had, we could systematically enter each site into their link checker tool, and you can see where the first links to that site appeared, so on which page or in which group. And then so we would look at common names. So yeah, of the 15 latest sites, it's always these accounts in these groups that are posting the first links. So obviously these accounts have something to do with it. Then we would also look, just like with the Twitter bots, what else are these accounts posting. So we identified a few more sites in that way. And yeah, so we were mapping them. Then we were also looking at the friends lists of these accounts. So here's a screenshot from CrowdTangle. So you can literally see the oldest post with from that domain name, weirdworldinfo.com. So where was it posted? Who posted it? So then we started stalking these accounts to find the connections between them. So there are tools called StalkScan and Who Posted What, where you can enter a Facebook account and literally see everything they posted and what they're connected to. So we also did reverse image search on some of the profile pictures, and they were actually stupid enough to use pictures of their own friends and family to create the fake accounts. So one of the photos was from one of the main guy's wife. So we also found her Facebook profile that way. So, and then we had all these names and account names. We checked some other sites, so we also found some pages on LinkedIn and Pinterest and Twitter. So this is an example from StalkScan, which is a really good tool if you're into investigative journalism on Facebook. You basically enter a Facebook account, and then you can click photos by this account or photos in which this account is tagged, or posts that this account has made, etc. So this is one of the main guys and his wife, but the picture is Molly Anderson, supposedly some American. This is one of those fake Twitter accounts. So move over village, here comes Kumanovo. So we found that these guys were mainly located in Kumanovo. There was a soldier among them. There was also a major in the military intelligence section who apparently served as a peacekeeper in Bosnia, I learned later, and who was subsequently recalled and demoted. There was also a police inspector. So we actually called these guys on the phone, and they didn't speak English anymore suddenly. So then Peter from News Checker, Professor Peter Burger, he had some Slavic language experts at the university. So he pulls one into his office. He calls back, speaking Macedonian, and yeah, okay, yeah, now, no, we don't know anything about these sites. We must have been hacked. It must have been hackers. We used to run some sites a long time ago, but not anymore. And but yeah, we don't know anything, and it's not true, and we don't work in the army and in the police anymore, and blah, 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 blah. So interestingly enough, these hackers must have been listening to the phone call, because 4 hours later, the websites all went offline. So it was basically game over for that network. So it completely disappeared. So then we published our story. We also went to Facebook, of course, and to Twitter and to Google to report. So a bunch of the Facebook accounts were shut down. The AdSense accounts were closed down. Twitter also took some action against some of the bots. And then later at another presentation, one of the guys from Google asked us, so do you know how much money they made from all of this? And we said, we don't know, but you gave it to them, so you should know. Oh yeah, well, we can't comment on the privacy of our clients, blah, 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 blah. So, but yeah, it must have been a lot because they kept on doing it for 2 years straight. So, funny thing is, we published it on leadstories.com and on newscheckers.nl, and we informed the national media in Belgium and the Netherlands. So it was picked up by the public broadcaster, and so the national correspondent of the Macedonian media agency in Brussels, she heard about it. She called me, what's all this about Macedonia that you're writing, and can I interview you, and blah, blah, blah. So she sent some dispatches back home, and suddenly I get phone calls from friends, hey, check out this website, your name has been mentioned on TV in Macedonia. So yeah, that was nice. Later on, we also noticed that, so they stayed quiet for a month or so, or a month or two. And then we noticed that there were some new sites popping up using the exact same stories again, using the exact same spamming technique on Twitter. Yeah, it all looked awfully similar. We also found some new fake Facebook accounts. So, but by then, Lead Stories had been accepted into Facebook's third-party fact-checking partnership. So I was actually able to immediately mark these stories as false and kill the distribution of these sites. And then a few weeks after that, they suddenly stopped posting. So I guess they got the message that they've either given up or they've become a lot better. So the military guy, I heard later from some people that he was demoted from his position as major. So what are the conclusions? So it's great if you fact check these individual stories. No, fake news, Muslim figure did not demand pork-free menus, blah, 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 blah. That's great, by all means do it, but they will keep posting that story over and over again. So what we should also do is investigate who is behind it, what the business model is, and try to disrupt their economic incentives. So if we report these kinds of things to Google AdSense and to the other advertising networks, then it really hurts them in the pocketbook. It really cuts off the money, and that's basically why these guys are doing that. So that makes it a lot more difficult for them. A lot of these advertising networks, in my experience also, so Google is one of the good ones. They really say we don't want fake news on our network. Or we don't want our ads on fake news sites, so if we detect it, we ban you. And the other networks, they also claim that's what they do, but if you look at the types of advertising that shows up on those sites, I think they quietly like it. Because on these low-quality advertising networks, what kinds of ads do you find? It's all stuff for natural penis enlargements. This secret little trick will gain you a lot of money. Local women in your town are looking for sex right now. Natural hair growth. Lose weight without any effort. So it's all stuff aimed at gullible people that will believe anything on the internet. And that's exactly the sort of people that these websites attract. So to the advertising networks, they're actually performing a valuable service in finding an audience for these kinds of ads. So secretly, I think they don't mind that these sites exist. But we should still call them out on it and say, hey, you're financing hatred, you're financing all sorts of political disinformation, you should stop it. And yeah, we should, of course, build alliances and publish as much as we can. Because that's another way that I've noticed as a fact checker. If I debunk one of these stories, Muslim pedophile set on fire by blah blah blah, yeah, that's not true, that didn't happen. I get comments, yeah, you're just defending pedophiles, you're a leftist, Soros-funded, blah 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 blah, lefty liberal CNN-owned Democrat. I've been called all sorts of things. But if you, in your fact check, if you're also mentioning foreigners, or trying to mislead honest, hard-working Americans and taking away their ad money, then suddenly they listen, then suddenly they're interested. So by explaining that part of the story too, it's not just that this story is fake, it's also that there are people behind it who are trying to fool you for money. That gets people angry, and then they will not call you CNN and liar and Democrat, but yeah, get angry at the people that are trying to steal their money. So that's basically my story. If you have any questions about the software or the tools, I'll be around today and tomorrow morning before I have to go back to Belgium. Or if you have questions now, go ahead and ask them. There's a question over there, but no microphone, I guess.
Thank you so much for this exciting, interesting story. My question is about the first part of it, about the truck driver. So were you actually able to establish whether there was a network behind this person, or was it his own initiative? Why was he doing this? What was behind his intentions?
It was mainly financially motivated. So we looked at all the people behind it. So, and they were not the proverbial school kids from Velez doing this in their spare time. They were really middle-aged people with children and jobs. But yeah, if you can make 300 euros a month doing some boring government job, and you can make 3,000 euros a month copy-pasting some articles into a WordPress site, I mean, I would be tempted too. So these guys, they were doing it for the money. They really didn't care about the potential impact or anything. So they didn't think that this was evil, or they really didn't care about any of the stories, really. All they cared about is, will this story get me clicks?
Sorry about that. Who was paying them? Like, did you establish this?
There was no as far as we know, there was no organization, but they were relying on the income from these advertising networks.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you very much. I heard about this story, but what I was wondering is how much of, obviously it's immoral and not acceptable, but in how many countries it would be really considered illegal in a sense of being punishable by law?
I don't know if it is illegal per se. I don't think, to be honest, I don't think it should be illegal. It's just immoral and against the terms of service. So Google AdSense can shut them down just by, yeah, this is hate speech and this is, yeah, advertising on false stories. We don't allow that. Facebook also doesn't like it. Twitter doesn't like it. So it's not a question of punishing this by law. You're not allowed to spread this story. By all means, spread this story, and then we can see, hey, that's the guy who is spreading this story.
So basically, they were able to keep the money that they made during this period they were running the operation.
As far as I know, they were able to keep the money. But yeah, they lost their jobs and their reputation. So, and I hope this story gets more widely published, so we can scare a few more people into not doing this. There's a question in the back. Oh. Yeah, okay, yeah.
Okay, so we had a lot of similar experiences in tracking these people, finding their names, their identities is similar. But the step that we miss in the work, it's from Raskrinkavanje BA, the one that dealing with the media fact checking in Bosnia, is the part where you basically take down their business. This has happened a few times in terms of like if someone is exposed, it's usually a he shuts down this website and then waits for a while and then makes 10 new ones. But like what I'm interested in is how do you report it? What channels do you use to report them for that to actually have an effect? Do you go through like regular Facebook forums where you report content, or do you lean on the Facebook's cooperation with third-party fact checkers. Same goes for Google. Do you just go to AdSense's regular reporting, website, or do you have, as a fact checker, I'm assuming IFCN verified signatory, do you have like more channels available to you to efficiently do this?
So with Facebook, yeah, since we're in the third-party fact-checking partnership, we can basically label all their stories false, and that's the end of the site on Facebook as far as that is concerned. With Google, we contacted the spokesperson. So I actually don't know if there is any report abuse form. I assume there is some abuse reporting form for AdSense. But yeah, what worked really well in this case was public exposure via the media. So this is not the first network that I've worked on. I've also done a network that was specializing in death hoaxes. And they were actually being run from Africa, from Ghana, by a rather famous musician there, by the name of Akesse Sanza, who claimed to be the richest travel blogger in Africa, but actually his money came from fake news. So after we threatened him with exposure, suddenly all his websites also went offline. So that seems to be the thing that works best. Just shutting down a few of their AdSense accounts, it happens, but they will just register another one. But yeah, public shaming seems to work best.
But then if you have their IDs and you can continue to track them, or you know the stories and stuff like that, so you're on them like continuously, you can do the whole thing all over again.
Yeah, these stories, it's actually great that they copy and steal so much from each other, because I've seen the same stories being recycled by fake news networks being run from Pakistan and India. So the Muslim figure, I think I saw the story last week again, so it really helps. I literally have alerts set up in Trendolizer if there's a new site trying to recycle one of these old stories. Facebook is also working on that, so they're offering fact checkers. As soon as they've entered the fact check about one of these stories, they will now alert you if there are newer copies coming online, so you can rate those too. So yeah, that's really going to cause a lot of friction and extra work for these guys, because as I said, they don't speak enough English to properly create their own articles. Yeah, another question over there.
Hey, I was wondering, so is it possible to like create a website with some ads and then generate a lot of bots and like create a lot of fake traffic, which click on those ads and then like you get the money? Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, you're basically describing ad fraud, and it happens, but yeah, most advertising networks are very good at detecting that sort of stuff nowadays. Okay. But it still happens. BuzzFeed recently reported on ad fraud within apps on mobile, and where there were artificial clicks being generated, and that ran into the hundreds of millions of dollars. Oh. So sometimes the detection fails.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you did mention that a lot of these stories, they originated from America, from fake sites in the United States. And I mean, okay, these websites in Macedonia, they are shut down. And those from Veles and now this from Kumanovo, I'm sure that these guys in Kumanovo, they heard about the Veles guys and that they replicated this thing. I'm sure that if we dig a bit more, we will find some guy from this group in Kumanovo who was studying in the same computer school in Veles that started the same thing. But I mean, what are we going to do with those websites in America that do provide this fake news? I mean, I think that would be the most interesting thing, you know, if you could, you know, make an Excel sheet to show that how many stories actually originate from fake news websites from America that actually still do exist, that actually still do produce fake news stories. I mean, I read a story I read an interview from a guy from America that does produce fake news. He even wanted to sell his fake news to the fake news writers from Veles.
Yeah, yeah.
So he wanted revenue, you know, like he wanted to license his fake news to the guys in Veles.
So
And
it's a good thing you ask, because a lot of the sites they use as a source, like Your Newswire and News Punch, etc., they are indeed based in the US. And with Lead Stories is actually an American company, so we fact check for the American market, and we use, we look at American audiences, and we're actually dealing with these sites. So we've actually given them quite a few fake news strikes, and they've actually lost quite a lot of their distribution already. So it's not that we're just focusing on Macedonian copycats, we're actually going after the originals too. I think the time's up and that everybody is hungry now. Last question, okay.
Okay, just a short question. Do you believe Google should be held accountable for not doing any audit work on the AdSense accounts? I mean, it seems like a very simple solution. They should not allow AdSense accounts unless they've checked the content and made sure it's a legitimate website. However, they would not do it because they would lose some places where the ads can be shown. But do you think it should be their responsibility to do the audit work of the publisher within the AdSense system?
Yeah, there are
How to force them to?
There are several initiatives underway. Companies like NewsGuard and Factmata and TrustMetrics that are actually trying to build blacklists and in real time of bad sites, among other sites that publish fake news that have been debunked by fact checkers a lot, but also illegal sites like porn, drugs, child pornography, weapons. So that these lists are automatically sent to advertisers and advertising companies so they can be blacklisted. So there is work going on there, and also the European Union is trying to set something up to facilitate that and make it impossible to basically make money from these kinds of sites. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Yes, so I'm sure that you have a lot more questions, but I encourage you to come to Martin and to ask whatever you want him to ask. So this was the final session of the first part. We are heading to the lunch now.
Pivnica Sarajevo, same venue as usually.
In front of this building or in the hall, there will be our volunteers with the t-shirts with a point logo, and they will walk with you to the venue of the lunch, and we will be back at how many?
Please come back on time, and
yeah,
thank
check
you
the
for
time
your
at the
attention.
agenda, and please be back on time.
Yeah. Thank you.